7 of the most important ancient discoveries. Cave of Altamira. In the northernmost regions of Spain, a cave by the name of Altamira is considered one of the most important cultural sites in the world. Around 14,000 years ago, a landslide or a rockfall covered the entrance to the cave, and it forever sealed its history. And as it turns out, forever only lasted until the 1800s, when a nearby tree fell and unblocked the entrance. An amateur archaeologist known as Marcelino Sanz de Satula took a stroll through the mountains with his 8-year-old daughter in 1879. The official story states that it was the child that discovered the cave and showed it to her father. The very fortunate series of events uncovered some of the most famous and greatest cave paintings to date. Perhaps the most prominent art piece in the cave of Altamira is the Bison, which is located in the Great Hall of Polychromes. It might be foolish to think this way now, but when the discovery was first made and publicized, it was met with great offense and skepticism. At the time, scholars in that field did not believe that prehistoric humans had the capability of understanding or practicing any form of art. It took over 20 years of ridicule and accusations until Satula was finally believed, and it was due to other similar findings across the globe. Sadly, he was not alive to see his work vindicated. Sangxing-Dui. Located in the heart of China, inside modern-day Sichuan province, the remnants of a Bronze Age culture provide an insight into the ancient world of China. The Sangxing-Dui, as it is now known, is the name of the archaeological site that was first discovered in 1929, when a farmer who was digging a well found a large stash of jade relics. For generations, archaeologists tried to find the main source of the artifacts, but were unsuccessful until 1986. As accidental discoveries go, this is a perfect example, because even after 50 years of research and excavation, it was construction workers who eventually found the main source of the relics. So it was found in the 1900s. When was it actually created? Around 3,000 years ago. The workers found multiple sacrificial pits filled with thousands of bronze, jade, pottery, and gold artifacts that had been completely smashed. After a few weeks, a second, bigger pit was found, only 40 feet away. The second site proved to be the best find in the area. It included many sculptures of animals, humans, and even dragons. The city had big 20-foot walls, irrigation systems, navigation systems, and flood control protection. The culture in that area had a completely different way of bronze making compared to the traditional ancient Chinese way. This means that there were multiple independent cultures in ancient China. Findings like this challenge the official narrative that all Chinese civilizations started from the Yellow River Plains. Some scholars considered the bronze figures that were found to be more fascinating than the terracotta army in Xi'an because of the immense difference in artistic style and the amazing level of detail they possess. Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls were found in a cave system known as the Qumran Caves. They are located in the modern-day West Bank territory. Originally written between 300 BCE and 100 CE, the scrolls lay undisturbed until 1946, when a group of archaeologists, led by Bedouin shepherds, explored the area. The Dead Sea Scrolls are a collection of about 981 texts. Broken down, the findings resemble this. 40% were copies of already known Hebrew scriptures. 30% were newly found texts, including the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Enoch, and the Book of Tobit. The remaining scrolls were sectarian in nature, meaning they spoke about the non-religious rules and beliefs of some of the different sects of Judaism. Before this discovery, the earliest Hebrew manuscripts of the Bible dated to the 10th century CE. The Dead Sea Scrolls gave scholars the opportunity to compare and contrast the change in tradition and how the Old Testament was perceived in the early periods of its existence. Most of the texts are drastically different when compared to ones from the 10th century CE, except for the books of Exodus and Samuel. The Tomb of Tutankhamun. King Tutankhamun was buried in the Valley of Kings, some 7 hours away from the famed Pyramids of Giza. His tomb is known as KV62, which is a standard Egyptological designation, a bit less impressive than one could imagine. King Tut became the pharaoh of Egypt when he was only 9 years old and ruled between 1333 BC and 1323 BC, when he unfortunately died. His tomb was robbed twice shortly after its completion and then lay undisturbed for centuries. In 1922, Howard Carter discovered KV62 under the remains of normal workers' huts that were built in later periods. This is most likely the reason the tomb took so long to find and was so well preserved. This is the unbroken seal of the third chamber of Tutankhamun's innermost shrine. In total, it took 8 years to catalog and examine everything that was buried with the young pharaoh. The most memorable artifact being the solid gold funerary mask that he was buried with. In an adjacent room labeled the Treasury, there were more than 5,000 artifacts documented, including vintage wines, a large statue of Anubis, and what some believe to be his 2 stillborn offspring. Even though King Tut was not the most influential or important pharaoh in Egyptian history, his tomb was the best preserved one ever found, and it sparked worldwide interest in the old world. It led to many more important archaeological discoveries, and it also started the legend of the Curse of the Pharaohs.
Cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence.
There have been 11 mysterious and not so much deaths contributed to the Curse of the Pharaoh. What do you think? Would you go in an ancient pharaoh's tomb and take something from it? Let us know in the comments. Pilat's Stone, a damaged limestone block with minimal intact inscription, was found in the Caesarea Maritima, which is a historic archaeological site in modern-day Tel Aviv in Israel. The artifact was found in 1961, but it dates back to around AD 26 to 36. Otherwise known as some of the most important years for the Christian religion and possibly the world as a whole. Inscribed on the stone was a dedication to Augustus, the founder of the Roman Empire. It most likely stood in front of a temple commemorating Tiberius, the son of Augustus, who was the emperor of Rome during the time. The other name mentioned on the block was that of Pontius Pilate. If you're not well versed in biblical history, Pontius Pilate was the man who led the trial against and eventual crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Not knowing the immense historical significance of the stone, workers later reused it as a building block for a set of stairs in a simple stage house, where it stood for thousands of years. Apart from the written accounts, the stone is the most definitive proof that the man Pontius Pilate existed. It adds legitimacy to the biblical account of history. Christian cultures all around Europe have their own legends about what happened to Pilate after the crucifixion. Perhaps the most intriguing one hails from Switzerland. Pilatus, a mountain near Lucerne, is where the man was banished to as punishment for his involvement in the death of Jesus Christ. The Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was found in Rosetta, a city in the Nile Delta. It was misplaced by about 70 miles from its original location in the ancient city of Memphis. The story of the stone starts in 196 BC when Ptolemy V issued an official order and had it inscribed on the rock stele. Sometime during the early Christian period, the stone was moved to the city of Rashid, or Rosetta, and was used in the construction of the Ottoman fort named Julian. During Napoleon Bonaparte's campaign in Egypt and Syria in 1791, Fort Julian fell under their control, and a soldier named Pierre-François Bouchard noticed the slab and the inscriptions it had. On it were 3 texts in 3 languages: Ancient Greek, Demotic, and Ancient Egyptian. It was quickly noted that the stone was very important, and after almost 10 years of Ottoman, British, and French quarrels in the legendary city of Alexandria, the stone eventually found its way to Britain. After some examination by different groups of scholars, the stone was placed in the British Museum, where it stays to this day. Before the discovery, there was no understanding of the ancient Egyptian language. The Rosetta Stone gave people hope that they could decipher the language by cross-referencing it with ancient Greek. But it was easier said than done. The first hurdle was translating the Greek, which was tough in its own right. It took a French translator 2 years to come out with a good enough translation. From then on, other scholars improved on his translation until a consensus was met. After countless hours of work spread between many scholars and spanning countries and ages, the Rosetta Stone was finally deciphered and translated in 1958. This allowed us to learn unimaginable amounts of information about the ancient world of Egypt. Göbekli Tepe. Located in Turkey's southeastern Anatolia region, Göbekli Tepe is probably one of the most important finds in recent history. The first mention of the site was made by the University of Chicago and Istanbul University in 1963. It was only briefly mentioned in their research and was somewhat discarded as a place of importance. That was until 1994, when Klaus Schmidt decided to re-examine the location. Nowadays, Göbekli Tepe is considered to be the oldest man-made temple on Earth. Research puts its creation time to 11,000 years ago, right around the pre-pottery Neolithic period, or the Stone Age, until it was abruptly abandoned. The next few layers of the site date back to classical times. In total, there are more than 200 pillars concentrated in 20 circles, and the main theory is that it was used as a mountain sanctuary during the Stone Age. It is believed that the site was also used as a location for a cult of the dead, in other words, a graveyard. Apart from the extensive connections made between Göbekli Tepe and ancient aliens, the discovery offers the possibility to rewrite early human history. It is possible proof that building monuments and temples started with hunter-gatherers and not farming communities as it was previously believed. There's still a lot more research that needs to be done, but one thing is certain: Göbekli Tepe is an incredibly important discovery for the human race.